It's fine. It's okay. That's what you tell yourself, staring at the cold coffee that's been sitting untouched for an hour. The room is quiet now. Too quiet. The kind of silence that buzzes in your chest like static. You scroll through your messages, fingers hovering above the keyboard, typing, deleting, typing again. You want to say something that will fix it, something that will make the tension fade. But the words don't come from your heart. They come from exhaustion. So you type, "I'm sorry," and hit send. You don't mean it. Not really. You just want the heaviness to lift, for their replies to sound warm again, for everything to return to that fragile calm you both pretend is peace. Because arguing feels dangerous. Because silence feels worse. And because part of you is terrified that if you stop being the one who apologizes first, there won't be an us left to save. That's the thing about always being the peacemaker. No one tells you how heavy it becomes. You start bending so often that you forget what standing straight feels like. You start swallowing your thoughts, choosing quiet over honesty, calm over clarity. The apologies pile up in your throat until they taste like defeat. And yet, you keep saying them. You tell yourself it's maturity. It's empathy. It's love. But deep down, you know it's fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of rejection. Fear of being the reason something breaks. You start believing that peace means keeping everyone else comfortable, even if it costs you your own comfort. You learn how to make your voice small, how to speak in a way that won't spark another storm. You start apologizing for things that were never yours to carry. Their moods, their silence, their distance. And slowly, something inside you begins to fade. The self that once spoke freely, laughed loudly, argued with conviction, it retreats. You begin to measure your worth by how calm things stay, not by how true you are to yourself. The relationship becomes a quiet battlefield where you surrender first every single time, just to keep things from falling apart. You tell yourself it's love, but love that demands silence isn't love. It's survival, and survival has a cost. It shows up as emotional fatigue, as the ache that comes from giving too much, as the subtle emptiness you feel even when things seem fine. So you sit there, staring at the message you just sent, knowing it wasn't about guilt. It was about keeping the world from shaking, about convincing yourself that harmony is worth more than truth, about choosing not to lose them, even if it means losing a little more of yourself each time. Peace shouldn't feel like surrender. But when love turns fragile, silence becomes survival. The psychology behind constant apology isn't about manners. It's about survival. When you keep saying sorry for things that aren't your fault, your nervous system isn't seeking forgiveness. It's seeking safety. Your brain has learned to equate peace with control, calm with acceptance, and silence with love. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, "Am I right?" and started asking, "Will this keep them from leaving?" Conflict avoidance often begins early. Maybe you grew up in a home where arguments turned into storms, where raised voices meant danger, or where love came with conditions. You learned that to stay safe, you had to stay small. So you began reading the room like a survival skill. Every sigh, every pause, every flicker of irritation. You learned how to sense tension before it spoke, how to smooth it before it spread. You became fluent in emotional fawning, the reflex of pleasing, apologizing, appeasing, the kind that whispers, "If I make them happy, they won't hurt me. If I keep the peace, I'll be loved." Anxious attachment grows from that same soil. It's the fear that love can vanish at any moment, so you hold it tightly, even when it burns. You tell yourself it's care, sending that message first, apologizing even when you're the one in pain, shrinking so they don't feel threatened. You take responsibility for every crack in the relationship, because it feels safer to blame yourself than to face the idea that someone you love might not stay. Your body keeps the memory of those early lessons. Each apology releases a small dose of relief, a chemical signal that the threat has passed. The brain mistakes that relief for reward, so it repeats the pattern. Conflict rises, you apologize, tension drops, and you survive another day. Over time, sorry becomes more than a word. It becomes a ritual, an armor. You wear it so instinctively that you forget it's heavy. You apologize for feelings. "I'm sorry, I'm so emotional." You apologize for needs. "I'm sorry, I keep asking for reassurance." You apologize for existing too loudly. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it about me." And with every sorry, you surrender a piece of your selfhood. You become the emotional shock absorber in every room, absorbing anger, guilt, discomfort that isn't yours. You shrink so others can feel big. You quiet your truth so others can stay comfortable. But the peace you protect isn't peace at all. It's a fragile truce built on your silence. Psychologically, this dynamic is a power imbalance disguised as love. One person learns to dominate the emotional climate. The other learns to maintain it. One gets to express, the other gets to suppress. It's not harmony, it's hierarchy, wrapped in tenderness. And yet, to the one who over-apologizes, it feels noble. It feels kind. Because for them, love has always been tied to sacrifice. But here's the quiet tragedy. When you keep apologizing for things you didn't break, you start believing you were made to fix everyone. There comes a point when the apology no longer heals. It hollows. You feel it in the quiet moments. That strange ache of knowing you've become smaller than you were meant to be. You keep dimming your light, hoping the room will feel calmer, forgetting that peace built on silence is only the absence of noise, not the presence of understanding. The Stoics spoke of inner boundaries as the foundation of self-respect. They believed serenity doesn't come from controlling others, but from governing your own response. Yet, when you live in constant apology, you cross those boundaries without noticing. You hand over your emotional freedom piece by piece, mistaking compliance for compassion. You forget that peace without dignity is just submission wearing soft colors. Buddhist thought teaches detachment from suffering, not by abandoning love, but by loosening the grip of fear that twists it. But fear is exactly what drives the over-apologizer. Fear of rejection. Fear of emptiness. Fear of disconnection. So you cling tighter, confuse stillness with safety, and think that if you bend far enough, nothing will break. Yet the bending itself becomes the breaking. Existentialists warned of this quiet death, the erosion of the self in pursuit of belonging. When you live to be accepted, your being becomes conditional. You speak only what won't disturb. You feel only what won't offend. You edit your existence for comfort's sake. Every sorry becomes a small funeral for a truth you didn't allow to live. you begin to fade into the background of your own life, a ghost of harmony haunting the space where honesty once stood. Picture a candle in a dark room. It burns just enough to keep others at ease, careful not to flicker too brightly, careful not to draw attention. It sacrifices itself slowly, melting to maintain the mood. That's what over-apology feels like. A quiet dimming to keep the peace, or waves that soften before they reach the shore, afraid of disturbing the sand. There is beauty in gentleness, yes, but tragedy when gentleness becomes disappearance. True peace isn't the absence of tension, it's the presence of truth, without fear. It's standing tall in a storm and realizing that calm can exist inside you even when the world around you trembles. It's the courage to say, I will not apologize for being human, for feeling deeply, for existing as I am. So ask yourself, is peace still peace if it silences who you are? Because the peace you build by abandoning yourself is a fragile illusion, destined to crack under its own pretense. The deeper kind, the kind that endures, begins when you reclaim your right to exist without justification. When your voice no longer trembles in the presence of love. When you understand that calm and authenticity can coexist. The moment you stop apologizing for your existence, you begin to understand what real peace feels like. Healing begins quietly, not in grand declarations, but in small moments of recognition. It begins the first time you catch yourself about to say, I'm sorry, and stop. The silence that follows feels strange, almost guilty, because for so long, apology was the bridge that kept everything from collapsing. But as you hold your breath and let the stillness stretch, something inside you begins to shift. You start to realize that love built on suppression cannot survive truth. That affection maintained by self-erasure is not intimacy, it's endurance. When you stop apologizing for existing, you make space for honesty, the kind that may shake the foundation, but finally lets you breathe. You learn that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of clarity. That love worth keeping can withstand discomfort, can hold space for two truths instead of one. The need to always be the calm one, the healer, the forgiver, begins to fade. Because real harmony does not demand your silence. Imagine standing by an open window after years of holding your breath. The air feels foreign at first, sharp and cool in your lungs. You realize how long you've been surviving on shallow inhales, afraid that too much oxygen might draw attention. But now, with the world moving softly beyond the glass, you let yourself breathe, fully, freely. Outside, the sky isn't quiet, yet it feels peaceful. Because peace has never meant stillness. It has always meant truth. You start hearing your own voice again, unfiltered, unafraid. It sounds different, steadier, more alive. You begin to speak without rehearsing safety first. You start to trust that the people meant to stay will stay, even when you speak what's real. You notice the old reflexes, the urge to apologize for feelings, to smooth over discomfort. And instead of surrendering to them, you pause. You ask yourself, am I saying this to keep peace or to avoid fear? And that question becomes a doorway. Through it, you walk back into yourself. You stop shrinking so others can feel big. You stop treating love like a negotiation. You start drawing lines that say, I can be kind without disappearing. I can be gentle without being silent. The air inside you feels lighter now, less crowded by guilt. The weight you carried for years, the weight of being everyone's calm, begins to lift. You are not the apology that held them together. You are the person learning to hold yourself, and the world doesn't collapse. It just changes shape. Some people leave, others stay. But what remains is something far more enduring than harmony: integrity. The soft kind of strength that doesn't need to say sorry for being real. Sometimes, the loudest form of love is the one that finally says no more. Subscribe to BeyondPersonaLab, where we uncover the hidden psychology of emotion, control, and freedom.